Did you know that around 5,000 years ago, there were folks living in the grasslands of the Eurasian steppes? These people were nomads, always on the move, never settling in one spot for too long. They didn't have permanent homes or farms, they just followed animals for food and shelter. It was a pretty free life, but survival depended on where the food was, right? Then, about 4,000 years ago, something incredible happened. Some smart cookies decided to stay put. They built houses, fenced in their land, and started planting crops. Can you imagine that? They created their own farmlands. But farming wasn't a walk in the park. They faced all sorts of challenges like droughts, floods, and pesky critters munching on their crops. In this video, we're re-diving into how this shift in lifestyle changed not just our history, but the whole course of human civilization. So stick around, and hey, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload. Life on Earth kicked off over 3 billion years ago, and let me tell you, it's been a wild ride. Food and water were always hard to come by, so animals migrated to find what they needed. Humans, being animals too, did the same until we figured out how to make tools. This was a game changer. With sharp stones, spears, and arrows, hunting got way easier. And when we domesticated dogs, it was like hitting the jackpot. We were still nomads, chasing animals for food, but we started settling near rivers and lakes to fish. For thousands of years, this was our jam. Then, around 12,000 years ago, something amazing happened. The last ice age ended, and the world warmed up. Plants and animals began to thrive in places that were once frozen. This lasted about 1,000 years, and during this golden age, humans had plenty of food and didn't have to roam as much. Some even started storing food for later, burying grain and drying meat underground. They carefully selected seeds to plant and began raising animals close to home. They weren't full-on farmers yet, but they were definitely on their way. After that, another ice age hit, making life tough again. But people kept learning and adapting. They tamed more animals and plants, gradually adopting farming as their main way of life. This is how agriculture was born. Sure, life was still challenging. Droughts, floods, bugs, and wild animals were constant threats. But now, they had a steady food source, giving them hope for the future. Farming meant they could settle down instead of constantly moving around. The first farmers popped up in various parts of the world, like East Africa, China, and the Middle East, each doing their own thing. But it was in the Middle East where farming really took off. As people settled, they needed to protect their crops and livestock, so they built houses and villages. They developed new skills, like weaving baskets and making pottery, which was super handy for storing grain and liquids. Villages grew into cities, and more folks started farming. Cities became bigger and wealthier, drawing people in. As cities expanded, people began to specialize in different jobs, like making shoes or cooking food. They sold their goods in marketplaces, using metals like gold and silver as currency. Large cities needed organized systems to manage water, food, and other resources, so rulers and organizations emerged. This marked the start of organized societies. Cities began competing against each other, each wanting to be the biggest and most powerful. They battled for supremacy, conquering others and imposing their rule. Throughout the Fertile Crescent, people flocked to cities for economic opportunities and exciting lifestyles. But city life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Competition was fierce, and those who couldn't keep up might end up homeless. To tackle this issue, some clever folks came up with a plan. They started building settlements outside the city walls where people could live more affordably. These settlements became known as suburbs. As suburbs grew, they attracted factories, shops, and schools, making them appealing places to live. Nowadays, many people prefer suburbs for their quieter lifestyle, away from the hustle and bustle of the city center. They usually have parks and gardens, making them greener than crowded urban areas. Plus, suburbs are designed for cars, making travel easier compared to the city center, where public transportation is often the main way to get around. Suburbs began popping up around major cities about 100 years ago, thanks to advancements in transportation technology. Before that, cities were packed with homes and workplaces. But with the invention of streetcars, trains, and buses, People could commute between suburbs and central business districts. In the US, Evanston, Illinois, developed around Chicago, while England saw the rise of Welwyn Garden City near London, inspired by Ebenezer Howard's vision. Today, suburbs are a common sight in many cities worldwide, though they look different in various countries. Cities in Asia, like Seoul, Tokyo, and Mumbai, have extensive suburbs, while European cities tend to have smaller ones compared to North American cities. In Australia, large suburbs can be found around cities like Sydney and Melbourne. On average, people living in suburbs enjoy a higher quality of life than those in city centers, with less noise, air pollution, and traffic congestion. It makes for a more pleasant living environment. Now, let's chat about something interesting: the difference between a nation and a state. A nation is a group of people who share common traits like language, culture, and history. For instance, the Kurds are an ethnic group living in several countries. They have their own language and traditions, but they don't have their own country. A state, on the other hand, is a political entity with a government, laws, and borders. France is a classic example of a state. It has a government that makes laws and borders that separate it from other countries. A nation-state is when a nation also happens to be a state, a country where everyone shares the same language, culture, and history. Japan is a great example. Everyone there speaks Japanese and shares a cultural identity. But creating a nation-state isn't always straightforward. Sometimes, people who speak the same language or belong to the same ethnic group live in different countries. This is true for the Kurds, who live across several nations but don't have their own. In some cases, a state can have more than one nation within its borders. Take Canada, for example. It has two official languages, English and French. This makes Canada a multicultural state because it's home to more than one nation. Sometimes a nation may not have its own state, like the Kurds. In this case, they're considered a stateless nation. The first nation-states emerged in Europe around the 18th century. As countries developed their unique cultures, they also became nation-states. Today, there are many nation-states in the world, like France, Germany, Italy, South Korea, Japan, and the UK. However, not all countries fit this mold. The USA, for instance, is not a nation-state because it has many different cultures and ethnic groups. It's a multinational state, meaning it has more than one nation within its borders. Imagine a world without borders. You could travel freely from one country to another without showing any documents. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, it was a reality a long time ago. About 12,000 years ago, humans lived in small groups that moved around without any countries or borders. But everything changed with the invention of farming. People started to settle down, own land, and form communities. They built houses and walls around their land, which led to the concept of land ownership. Eventually, people began claiming entire areas as their own, drawing lines on maps to show where their land started and ended. These lines became known as borders. Having borders gave people a sense of safety. They could protect their land and belongings from others who wanted to take what was theirs. But sometimes, people wanted more land, leading to wars to take over others' territories. Over time, they expanded their claims until they had entire countries. Today, almost every part of the earth belongs to a country. There are over 200 countries, each with its own flag, language, and rules. Borders may be just lines on a map, but they're super important. They help keep order among countries, allowing them to have their own laws and protect their people and land. Borders can be natural, like mountains or rivers, or artificial, like the border between France and Spain, created by people. But why do countries need borders? They help keep countries organized, ensuring that each has its own set of rules. Borders also keep countries safe, allowing them to defend themselves without worrying about interference from others. Plus, they facilitate trade and communication, helping countries work together despite their differences. But wait, do you think borders have always existed? Absolutely not. Before 100 years ago, most countries didn't have clear borders. People could move freely from one place to another. But as countries grew wealthier and stronger, they wanted more power. They fought wars to take over other countries and impose their rules. After World War II, countries started respecting each other's borders, realizing that fighting and trying to control others wasn't the way to go. So that's a wrap for today. We hope you enjoyed this journey from nomadic tribes to modern nation-states. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.